Broadcast. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, I want to welcome you to Mountainview Daycare Nutrition Program's 2018 annual training. And this year we're doing the training as a webinar. So thank you for participating. So in order to participate in the Child and Adult Care Food Program, the CACFP through Mountain View, you are required to receive and complete this annual training. So this webinar fulfills the training for the current fiscal year 2018. Okay, I'd like to start by inviting you to our website at mdnp.org. And when you go to the training, news, and conferences, then choose training, you'll be able to come back to this webinar. So that's another way to get to the webinar. Also, the handouts that accompany this webinar are available for download off the website. You should have received these in the mail recently, but are also available on the website. And you can find them. You can also find them in the handout section of this webinar. So you will need to have these handouts in front of you as we go through this webinar. Okay, so there's certain things that we are required to train every year. It's a requirement from USDA. And so the next 5 slides are compliance. Well, all of them are, but especially the next 5. And I'm going to go through the next 5 quite quickly because many of you have heard this many times. So I'm just going to get this out of the way. So bear with me as we get through these. The first thing we're going to look at is record keeping. So to be in compliance with USDA, the food program, these 3 items must be documented by the end of each current day. You have to have a dated menu or your meals, and your in and out times need to be documented. And the meal counts, the children who attend each of the meals. So the children by name, or if you're recording, they like click on their name or bubble their name in if you still are on the scan forms. But they have to be documented someplace by the end of each current day. Okay, meal counts are the names of children claimed for reimbursement at each meal. Like I said, those are the names of their specific kids. Meal counts must be kept daily. That's part of the daily requirement. If you're entering your daily records, then you are fulfilling this requirement by clicking on the children's present at each meal. If you're recording on paper to input later, the children present at each meal must be written down on paper, and it usually means like on the menu or the in and out records. Okay, claims processing. We do have a process we go through every month to process the claims you send in. So the first thing that happens is you have to input your daily records. You submit your claim to Mountain View by the 3rd day of each month. And Mountain View, we process your claim, but we do disallow meals if your records are incomplete, inaccurate, or missing. If the meals do not meet the CACFP meal pattern requirements, and if your meals are claimed in excess of the authorized capacity. So Mountain View will submit your claim to OSPI, and then OSPI, OSPI is its Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. That's our state level. And then OSPI submits the claim to USDA. Then after that, USDA does their processing, and it all comes backwards until we send a claim into you, a payment back to you, a payment back to you. Okay, civil rights. The provider must serve meals to all enrolled children without regard to race, color, national origin, gender, age, or disability. Any person who believes he or she has been discriminated against in any USDA-related activity should write immediately to the Secretary of Agriculture, Washington, D.C., 20250. So you see the blue building for the future poster on the right. That needs to be, you each should have one in your homes, and if you don't have it when we come out to visit, we will give you one. But it needs to be posted on your wall with your other daycare notifications. The building for the future flyer is one that you're going to give to each family as they enroll in your child care. It's just a one-time thing. But it is required that that poster is on your wall. So throughout this webinar, we have questions, but I do want to insert here that in the past when we've done webinars, we give you a set of questions that you send us back the answers in an email. And this time you do not have to do that because you actually have to log into the webinar and give us your email address so we document that you've come in and watched it. You do need to watch it until the very end. That's real important. And to get credit for the training, you need to watch the entire thing, but you don't have to send the answers back in. So we don't have multiple question answers, but I do have answers questions that I want you to think about. So the first question is, what is a meal count? So I'm going to pause for just a moment and let you think about that, and then I'll give you the answer. All right. The meal counts are the names that children claim for reimbursement at each meal. So I'm sure you got that right. Okay, we'll move on. So in the next portion of this webinar, we will focus on the updated food guidelines. We're going to be using the tools that have been published by USDA Team Nutrition. You should have received a packet in the mail with these included. They're also available on the website, like I mentioned earlier. And even though the new guidelines are now in place, you are not being disallowed for not being in compliance, as we're in a one-year grace period. But as of October 1st, 2018, you will be disallowed meals if you're not in compliance with the new guidelines. So it's really important. I know we've talked about these guidelines quite a bit, and this is a more detailed overview, so it's very important that you understand the guidelines. The CACFP meal patterns were updated to better align with the dietary guidelines for Americans. Part of that update includes lowering added sugars in the meals and snacks. Okay, this slide shows a section of the infographic that was created by Team Nutrition demonstrating that on average kids 9 to 13 years old eat between 17 and 22 grams of added sugars every day. By limiting sugars in breakfast cereals, meals and snacks served in the CACFP will give kids the chance to try and like new and healthy foods. As of October 1st, 2017, breakfast cereal must contain no more than 6 grams of sugar per dry ounce. Since WIC requires the same sugar limits for the cereals in their food packages, you can actually use any cereal that is listed on any state agency's WIC approved cereal list. So you can go on the WIC website and look at their approved cereal, and those cereals would be allowed also in the CACFP. You could also find cereals that meet the sugar limit by using the Choose Breakfast cereals that are lower in added sugars worksheet, and that's what we're going to focus on in the next few slides. Okay, so let's get started with the worksheet. So with the worksheet in front of you, you will notice that there are 4 steps listed. So for step 1, we're going to find the serving size in grams of the cereal using the nutrition facts labels. Many times cereals will also list servings in cups. Here though, you have 3/4 cups of cereal, but you only have to pay attention to the grams. For step 2, once you have your serving size, you can then look at the sugars line on the nutrition facts label on your worksheet to find the amount of sugars in 1 serving of this cereal. Next is step 3. You're going to take the serving size of the cereal and look at which row it belongs to in the chart on the worksheet under serving size. Here, serving size is listed as a range, so you can find the range that's appropriate for your serving size. We already said in step 1 that the serving size of this cereal is 30 grams. I do want to point out that there is a more extensive chart on the serving sizes and sugar limits on the back of the worksheet in case you cannot find the serving size of the cereal on the front of the worksheet. Okay, looking to the right of the 26 to 30 grams row on that same chart, we see that the sugars cannot be more than 6 grams. So is this sugar credible? Yes, it is credible. Whoops, I jumped ahead. Okay, so moving on, you can test yourself You can use the test yourself chart to test your knowledge, and there it is up there. As you can see on the chart, the maximum amount of sugar for 30 grams of cereal is 6 grams of sugar. Because the cereal only has 5 grams of sugars per serving, it is below the limit of 6 grams of sugar, and therefore it meets the sugar requirement for cereal in the CACFP. Okay, let's move on. As you're doing this, you can check the answer on the back of the worksheet at the bottom of the page, so you can double check in what you're doing. So this is what your sheet might look like after this activity. You can continue to add to this list as you find additional credible breakfast cereals you may serve in your program. So you can just add what you make nice little lists there. However, because we know that the cereal formulations can change from time to time, there is also included a note on the worksheet reminding you to check the nutrition facts label on this cereal often to make sure the cereal still meets that sugar limit. Okay, we're going to have one more question. How many grams of sugar are allowed per dry ounce of cereal? I'll pause for just a moment. Okay, so the answer is 6 grams of sugar are allowed per dry ounce. Okay, we're going to move on to yogurt, and that's the next worksheet. So as of October 1st, 2017, yogurt served in the CACFP must contain no more than 23 grams of sugar per 6 ounces. You can find the yogurts that meet the sugar limits by using the Choose Yogurts that are lower in added sugars worksheets, and we're going to focus on that next. Okay, you should have this worksheet in front of you, and you will also see it on the screen here. As you can see at the very top of this worksheet, it shows what sugar limit actually is, 23 grams of sugar per 6 ounces of yogurt. Beneath the sugar limit, you're going to see the 4 steps to follow to determine if a yogurt meets the sugar limit. Step 1 tells us to use the nutrition facts label and find the serving size in ounces or grams. As you can see on this label, the serving size is listed in ounces and in grams. Most of the time, yogurts will list both, but some yogurt containers may only list ounces while others only list grams. Sometimes the label will also just say 1 container, and then you have to look at the weight on the container, and this is usually found on the front of the yogurt or the side of the yogurt. For step 2, once you have your serving size, you can then look at the sugars line on the nutrition facts label on your worksheet to find the amount of sugar that's in 1 serving of this yogurt. Okay? For step 3, you take the serving size of this yogurt and see what row it belongs in. On the table shown on your worksheet, you can see that there are serving sizes listed in the table in ounces, and the top of that column is circled in blue. Serving sizes are also listed in grams, as you can see by the red triangle at the top of that column. You can use either the ounce column or the grams column in this step, but you don't need to use both. The serving sizes in this chart on the front shows the most common serving sizes for yogurt. A more extensive list of the yogurt serving sizes can be found on the back of the worksheet. So we know from step 1 that the serving size of this yogurt was 8 ounces, and it's circled here, and we're going to need this for step 4. Okay. Step 4 asks us to look at the sugar column on the table, which is on the right. There's a green square around the top of this column. As you remember in step 3, we found a serving size of our yogurt, which was the 8-ounce circled in blue. So for step 4, we look over to the right of that same row. We go all the way over to the sugars column and find the number in the same row as our serving size. There is a purple star around this number on our chart. If the amount of sugar in your yogurt is equal, 2 or less than this number, then your yogurt is credible. So this means that if the amount of yogurt in this 8 ounces of yogurt is 31 grams or less, then the yogurt is credible. As you can see on the chart, the maximum amount of sugar allowed in 8 ounces of this yogurt is 31 grams. Because this yogurt only has 9 grams of sugar per 8 ounces, it is below the limit of 31 grams. Therefore, it meets the limit for the yogurt in the CACFP. This answer is also on the back of the worksheet at the bottom of the page, so you can check your own work. The back of the worksheet it also has a more extensive list of serving sizes than what's on the front. On the bottom, where it says yogurts to serve in the CACFP, you can also write down the brand and type of credible yogurt that you have found and would like to serve. Because we know that yogurt formulations can change from time to time, there is also a note included on the worksheet reminding users to check the nutrition facts label on the yogurt often to make sure the yogurt meets the sugar limit. Okay, we're going to have another question. How many grams of sugar is allowed for 6 ounces of yogurt? I'm going to pause and let you think about that. Okay, the sugar limit for 6 ounces of yogurt is 23 grams of sugar, and I'm sure you got that all right. Okay, the next worksheet we're going to look at is serving milk in the CACFP. The front of the worksheet provides an overview of the milk requirements for the different age groups in the CACFP. The back of the worksheet includes some activities to help with understanding and comprehension. Okay, now let's take a closer look at the requirements for each age group. For infants, which covers birth through 11 months, breast milk and iron-fortified formula are allowed. Although it's not explicitly stated in the meal pattern for each age group, please note that breast milk is also allowed at any age in the CACFP. We will talk a bit more about that in just a minute. Children who are 12 to 23 months are allowed unflavored whole milk to help with the transition from infant formula to whole milk. Iron-fortified infant formula can be served to children between the ages of 12 and 13 months. And as I just mentioned, breast milk can also be served during this time. If you are serving breast milk to children 12 months or older, remember that the amount of breast milk served to the child must meet the fluid milk requirement for that age group. If not enough breast milk is provided, then the remaining amount must be made up with the appropriate type of milk for the child's age. So, for instance, 1 through 2-year-olds must be served at least 4 ounces of whole milk at breakfast. If the mother only brings 2 ounces of breast milk for her 1-year-old at breakfast, then 2 ounces of unflavored whole milk must be served in order to meet the required 4 fluid ounces of milk. The 2 milks do not need to be mixed in the same cup, and as a reminder, if breast milk is provided, the center or daycare home must provide all other required milk components in order for the meal to be reimbursable. Also, we encourage you to discuss this requirement with your parent or guardians. For children 2 through 5 years of age, you can serve unflavored, fat-free skim milk and unflavored low-fat 1% milk. To help children get used to the taste of fat-free or low-fat milk when they turn 2, unflavored whole milk and unflavored reduced-fat 2% milk may be served to the child between the ages of 2 years and 2 years and 1 month or 25 months. You can mix whole milk and low-fat milk during this time. Try gradually reducing the amount of whole milk or reduced fat milk while increasing the amount of low-fat or fat-free milk in the cup. The gradual change will help the child adjust to the taste of the low-fat or fat-free milk. Finally, children ages 6 through 12, 13 through 18, and adults can be served unflavored fat-free skim milk, flavored fat-free skim milk, and unflavored low-fat 1% milk. So as a reminder, in the CACFP, Credible milk for children 2 years old and older and adults include low-fat or fat-free lactose-reduced milk, low-fat or fat-free lactose-free milk, low-fat or fat-free buttermilk, low-fat or fat-free acidified milk. Milk must be pasteurized fluid milk that meets all state and local standards. Okay. We also recognize that there may be times when non-dairy beverages such as soy milk may need to be served. We encourage you to work with Mountainview MDNP as the needs arise and to determine what products are reimbursable in the CACFP. And you all have a handout with the different ones that are approved in our state. Finally, got some reminders regarding flavored milk in the CACFP. It cannot be part of a reimbursable meal or snack for children 5 years old and younger, whether it is store-bought or homemade, with flavored straws, powdered, or syrup. Flavored milk served to children 6 years and older and adults must be fat-free skim. Whoops, there we go. Speaking of flavored milk, you may have heard of an interim rule that may apply to those who are 6 years older. 6 years or older in the CACFP. This rule allows program operators in the school lunch program, breakfast program, milk programs, and the CACFP the option to offer flavored, low-fat 1% milk as part of a reimbursable meal for students in grades K through 12 and for special milk programs in the CACFP to participants 6 years of age or older. Non-fat milk, as the non-fat flavored milk can continue to be served to these participants as well. It is important to note that the rule does not take effect until July 1st, 2018, which is at the time of this recording, it's just a few weeks away. This means that right now all flavored milk served in the CACFP must be non-fat skim milk, and that non-fat flavored milk can only be served to those who are 6 years of age and older. Okay, we have another question. When is a meal not credible if flavored milk is served? And I'll pause again for you to think about that. All right, I'm sure you got this answer right. Flavored milk cannot be part of a reimbursable meal or a snack for children 5 years old and younger, whether it is store-bought, homemade, with flavored straws, powdered, or syrup. So flavored milk is only for 6 and above. And in my opinion, it's just best not to have any flavored milk. Okay, we're going to move on to the meat and meat alternate at breakfast. So the top of the worksheet outlines the basic requirement for a reimbursable CACFP meal. So you want to get this handout in front of you. A reimbursable breakfast in the CACFP must contain foods from these 3 components: milk, vegetable and or fruit. Remember, at breakfast only, vegetables and fruit are one combined component. The 3rd required component for breakfast in the CACFP is grains. For each component, there is a minimum amount that you must serve in order for it to be counted as part of a reimbursable meal. For instance, as you see on the screen, with the green box for children 3 to 5 years old, you must serve at least 6 fluid ounces or a 3/4 cup of milk, 1/2 cup of milk, fruit or vegetable, and 1/2 serving of grains. These are your requirements for breakfast, again for the 3 and 5-year-olds. Another example might be that for 1 through 2-year-olds, as you see in the blue box on the screen, you must serve at least 4 fluid ounces, which is equal to 1/2 cup of milk, 1/4 cup of vegetables, fruit or both, and 1/2 serving of grains. So now you have the option to serve a credible meat or meat alternate in place of grains at breakfast up to 3 times a week. So as many of you know, meat and meat alternates are foods such as eggs, peanut butter, soy yogurt, cheese, cottage cheese, tofu, and beans, just to name a few. So to serve a meat or meat alternate in place of a grain at breakfast, the amount of meat or meat alternate you serve must be equal to or more than the amount of grain required for breakfast at the age group. For example, like we just said, 3 to 5-year-olds must be served at least 6 fluid ounces, which is equal to 3/4 cup of milk, 1/2 cup of vegetables, fruit or both, and 1/2 serving of grains at breakfast. If you wanted to serve a meat or meat alternate at breakfast to your 3 through 5-year-olds, you would keep that same 3/4 cup of milk, keep that 1/2 cup of vegetables and or fruit, and then serve 1/2 ounce equivalent of meat or meat alternate. Because the meat alternate is replacing the grain, you do not have to serve a grain. Okay, you can do this up to 3 times per week, no matter how many days your center or home is open. So that means if you're only open 3 times per week, you can still serve meat alternate in place of grains all 3 times that week. And of course, you also have the option to do it once a week, twice a week, or not at all. It's simply an option. If you're open all 7 days of the week, you can serve meat alternates in place of grains up to 3 times per week as well. To take you through another example, again, we have our 1 through 2-year-olds at breakfast. Like we said, they're required to have 4 fluid ounces, which is equal to 1/2 cup milk, 1/2 cup vegetables, fruit or both, and 1/2 serving of grains at breakfast. If you wanted to serve meat alternate at breakfast to this age group, you would keep the 4 fluid ounces or 1/2 cup milk, keep the 1/4 cup vegetables, fruit or both, and substitute the 1/2 serving of grains and 1/2 ounces equivalent of meat alternate. Again, grains do not have to be served. You're serving an equal amount of meat alternates, but if you want to serve a grain, you can always serve it as an additional food. You cannot combine a grain and meat alternate to meet the minimum serving amount. So you cannot serve 1/4 of the grain serving and 1/4 ounces of meat or meat alternate to meet that component. And again, you can do this up to 3 times per week, no matter how many days your center or home is open. Now let's take a closer look at how much of a certain food makes up 1/2 ounce equivalent, 1 ounce equivalent, or 2 ounce equivalents of meat alternates. Okay, so as you can see on the screen, the bottom of your worksheet has a chart that lists common meat or meat alternates that might be served at breakfast, such as cheese, egg, etc. in the left column. Across the top, you will find different age groups for the child and adult meals in the CACFP. And then below that is a minimum serving size requirement for the age. So example, if you look at the column that has a red rectangle around it, you will see that the column is for the age groups of 1 through 2 and 3 through 5-year-olds. The light purple at the top tells you that the minimum serving size for meat and meat alternates for these 2 age groups is your 1/2 ounce equivalent. And then the information directly below it, there's a little light purple, tells you how much of a food is needed to make up 1/2 ounce equivalent of the meat alternate group. So you can see on your screen, on your worksheet, that 1/8 cup of beans, 1/2 ounce of natural processed cheese, 1/8 cup of cottage or ricotta cheese, and a 1/4 of a large egg, etc., all equal to 1/2 ounce equivalent of meat alternates. So if you look at the chart, the minimum serving size for yogurt in this age group, if you are serving it instead of grains at breakfast, is 1/4 cup or 2 ounces. A 1/4 cup is equal to 2 ounces of yogurt. So the next column, next to the 1 to 2-year-olds and 3 to 5-year-old, talks about the requirements for 6 through 12 and 13 through 18-year-old age group. You can see in the light purple box at the top that the minimum amount of meat alternates needed is 1 ounce equivalent, and that 1/4 cup of beans, 1 ounce of cheese, 1/4 cup of cottage cheese, and 1/2 large egg, etc., equal to 1 ounce equivalent of meat and meat alternates. And one more note before we move to the second page of the worksheet. As stated in the bottom of the worksheet, if you are serving beans or peas as a vegetable fruit component at breakfast, then you cannot also count those same beans or peas as a meat alternate in the same meal. So you would have to decide what component you want your beans or peas to meet, and then serve milk and the other required components to have a reimbursable meal. So now let's move to the second page of the worksheet. The section at the top gives you more ideas on how to serve meat and meat alternates at breakfast. Okay, so for instance, you can serve a meat or meat alternate as a standalone item such as cottage cheese, ham, or scrambled eggs. Here we have just 3 examples. You could serve cottage cheese with some mixed berries and milk, or you can serve some low-sodium ham next to the melon cubes with a glass of your milk. Or for your third example, you could do low-fat milk, some orange slices, and serve them next to scrambled eggs. So in all of these situations, you are serving one meat or meat alternate. It's not mixed with anything. It's just the serving next to your other 2 components, so that's what we mean with standalone items. Okay, you could also combine 2 or more different meat or meat alternates to meet the required serving amount for the component. So in the first example, we're serving cottage cheese and chopped nuts or seeds like sunflower seeds. Together they make up our meat alternate. Then we have them mixed with our mixed berries to fill the fruit, vegetable component, and the milk. Or we could do the same ham and cheese roll-ups where you lay slices of ham and cheese on top of each other and roll it up and serve it with a side of melon cubes and milk. Then for example 3, you're going to see that we added cheese to our scrambled eggs. So then the cheese and scrambled eggs together make up our meat alternate component. And then you serve that with orange slices and low-fat milk. So again, in review, you can do meat alternate on their own, or you can combine different meat alternates to meet that component. Okay. Finally, you can also serve the meat or meat alternate as part of an entree or a mixed dish that also has fruit or some other components, such as taking apple slices, which are fruit obviously, and spreading them thinly with peanut butter, which is your meat alternate. Or you can layer chopped fruit with yogurt and nuts in a cup or bowl and to make a fruit parfait, or what I like to call a crunchy fruit sundae, as another example of how you could combine the meat or meat alternate into an entree or a dish. Or you can serve a spinach egg bake or frittata, which has egg, and that's which is a meat alternate, and spinach from the vegetable group baked together. So there are just some different ideas of how you can incorporate meat alternates at breakfast and some suggestions for menu planning. And these ideas are summarized at the top of your worksheet next to that green checkbox. Okay. Okay, again, as with all meals and snacks served in the CACFP, you want to make sure you're serving the minimum serving sizes for the age group that you're serving. The type of milk you're serving is correct, and the food is prepared in a way that is safe and appropriate for the age group. Okay, of course, being mindful of choking hazards, proper preparation techniques, and things like that. Okay, the back of the second page also reminds you that bacon, imitation bacon products, and salt pork are not credible in the CACFP. Turkey bacon, Canadian bacon, and some types of sausage are credible only if the product has a child nutrition label or the product formulation statement are signed by the manufacturer. But before we conclude, let me go back one. Before we conclude this training, we'll briefly mention the whole grain rich requirement. The USDA CACFP requires that at least 1 serving of grains each day be whole grain rich. Foods that meet the whole grain rich criteria are foods that contain at least 50% whole grains and the remaining grains in the food are enriched or 100% whole grain. We will I'm going to give you more training on whole grain rich items in the near future. So just to remind you, when you're documenting your whole grain rich items in kid care, you'll have to click on the slider button under the grain component to be counted as a serving of whole grain rich once a day. If you're using scan forms, then there's a whole grain bubble that you'll need to bubble, and that's really important. Okay, as mentioned before, we're in a grace period currently. As of October 1st, 2018, you're going to be disallowed a meal or snack a day unless you serve a whole grain rich item and document it at least one time each day. So if you look at your error reports, you can see that you're not clicking on that. You'll see a, like it says that you're not documenting that whole grain rich item a day every day, then that right now is a warning, but it will become a disallow as of October 1st. So that is the, let's see, I think I have one more question. Let me go through one more question here. Meat alternates may be served how many times a week as a replacement for the grain requirements at breakfast? Let me pause just a moment. Okay, I bet you got it right. Now, you now have the option to serve a credible meat or meat alternate in place of grains at breakfast up to 3 times per week. All right, so with all of that, that concludes our webinar. And I want to thank you for participating. And I do want to invite you, since this is a pre-recorded webinar and you have the link to it, you can always go back and listen specifically. Some things are kind of complicated maybe, so you can go back and listen intently to figure out each, especially when it comes to the grams of sugars and things like that. So feel free to go back. And that concludes it. You do not have to send us an email this year. And I thank you very much, and we look forward to visiting you in your homes. Thank you, and goodbye.